Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I got the message before the words ever showed up. The room told me first. Friday night in downtown Asheville. The kind of place that makes a glass of wine feel like an achievement. Low brick walls, Edison bulbs, a chalkboard menu written by someone who truly loves cursive. I'm Daniel Reeves, 38, and I run a small renovation company on the south side. I spend my days turning crooked rooms straight and leaky roofs honest. The plan was simple, a quiet date with my wife at a spot she'd been hinting at all week. I'd wrapped a project early, scrubbed the sawdust off my hands, and arrived 5 minutes before our reservation. She came in right on time, hair done like a magazine cover, eyes alive in that way that makes you think the night might go someplace good. Then I watched the energy lift out of our table and drift 3 seats over to a man she recognized from a mutual friend's party. The first tap on the bar stool looked harmless. She leaned back in her chair, turned a shoulder toward him, and tossed a smile that missed me by a mile. Her menu lay unopened. He said something about a trip to Miami. She laughed like he'd just solved healthcare. I tried a light comment about the specials, a little joke about how every place in this town serves something with truffle oil. She nodded without turning, fingers playing with the rim of her glass as if it deserved more attention than the person across from her. Our server hovered, pen poised, waiting for any sign we were here together. I ordered for myself. She waved the server off and said she needed a minute, which she used to ask the guy about his favorite hotels on South Beach. I've rebuilt kitchens where the studs were twisted like corkscrews. You learn to spot structural issues at a glance, settling in one corner, a hairline crack that means more than it lets on. What I saw across that tiny table wasn't a crack. It was a different blueprint entirely. The angle of her body faced a life that didn't include me. The laugh came too fast. The hand brushed his sleeve as if her palm had just remembered a habit it loved. A few months ago, she would have reached for my wrist while she told a story, punctuated a line with a quick squeeze. Tonight, her hand stayed busy around the distance between us. I set my phone face down and watched the room more than I watched them. Couples finished the week in little rituals, shared appetizers, inside jokes, plans for a Saturday hike. A guy in a flannel shirt used a napkin to wipe lipstick off the edge of his beard while the woman across from him grinned. Normal scenes. Reliable ones. At our table, the air felt thinner, like the vent above us had shut off. I tried small, practical questions. Did she want a cheese board? Was she thinking red or white? She answered without looking away, words clipped, the tone you use when a cashier asks whether you need a bag. The man finally noticed me noticing him and gave a polite nod. He adjusted his watch, took a measured sip, and kept his eyes on his own lane. He didn't push, didn't crowd. That almost made it worse. His restraint let the spotlight burn a little hotter on her choices. The longer it went, the clearer her intention became. Let me sit with it. Let me see myself as optional. She wasn't careless. She was deliberate. The first time I saw that precision was when she organized our move into the house we bought 3 years back. Color-coded boxes, a spreadsheet that could have run a small shipping company. That same focus now aimed away from our table. When the server returned, I asked for water and a second napkin. I wanted the rhythm of doing something useful. Fold the napkin, set it under the glass, wipe the condensation ring, keep the table clean. She finally ordered a rose she'd posted about online 2 days earlier. The caption then had read, "Friday can't come soon enough." I thought that meant us. Maybe it meant the bottle. She took the first sip and closed her eyes like she'd earned it. Whatever she was chasing, it wasn't conversation with me. I kept my voice even and asked how her week went. She offered 3 sentences about an office training and a vendor who showed up late with samples. Then she pivoted back to Miami like the city had hired her for tourism. I asked the man if he lived here or was visiting. "Asheville, born and raised," he said. He glanced toward the door, not eager for a scene, clearly aware he'd wandered into a marriage he didn't intend to stand in front of. I thanked him for the clarity built into his posture. He shrugged and smiled the small smile of someone who understands he is not the point. My fork touched the appetizer we were sharing, and I realized I hadn't tasted a single bite. I can usually tell you which seasoning is missing, whether the cook used butter or oil to finish a pan. Nothing registered. My attention was occupied by everything unspoken. At the edge of my vision, her phone lit up with a notification. She turned it face down with a practiced motion and slid it under the menu. Familiar choreography. I'd seen small, flickering signs for a while, password changes, late-night scrolling, laughter that started in a different room and stayed there. Each one, on its own, could be explained. Together, they built a clear picture. When I finally caught her eyes, I didn't offer an argument. I offered a mirror. I asked one calm question. Are you here with me tonight? She paused long enough for the question to matter. Then she tilted her head in that new way she'd adopted recently, the way that turns accountability into performance art. Relax, she said softly, but with an edge that served as a dare. The word hung there like a command. Relax while the foundation shifts. Relax while the door you walked in through becomes an exit sign with your name on it. I steadied my breathing and looked around the room again as if the brick could answer something for me. I thought about the job site I'd left at noon, a 1920s bungalow where a previous contractor covered rotted joists with fresh paint to hide the problem. My crew had to strip the floor back to the beams and start from truth. You don't argue with rot. You document it. You make a plan. You fix what can be saved and replace what's past saving. She shifted in her chair and finally faced me straight on. Her smile was light, almost friendly, but carried the steel of a test she already assumed I'd fail. Then she gave me the line I'll never forget. Doors open if you don't like it. No raised voice. Just a clean slice delivered with a casual flick of the wrist. The man at the bar blinked hard and focused on his drink as if it required supervision. The server took one involuntary step backward. A couple at the next table went quiet. I heard the sentence land and felt something inside me set like fresh concrete. Not shock. The words arranged the moment into an honest map. They said exactly what they meant. My place at that table was voluntary, and she would welcome my absence the way she'd welcomed his attention. I took a breath, set the napkin square, and straightened the water glass out of habit. A small act, but it gave my hand something steady to do. Across from me, her posture softened for half a heartbeat, as if some part of her wondered whether she'd gone too far. Then the armor slid back into place. The music carried on. A bartender cracked fresh ice. A woman near the window took a photo of her dessert. The world stayed ordinary while my marriage announced a new set of terms. I finished the sip of wine I'd already paid for and let the taste register at last. Strawberry, a hint of something floral, colder than it needed to be. I set the glass down with care, the way I place a cabinet door after sanding it smooth. The night wasn't over for the room around us. For me, something had already concluded. I didn't argue. I didn't plead a case. I didn't reach for her hand just to feel it slide away. I did one thing only. Committed the moment to memory with the clear, quiet certainty of a man who understands what a blueprint is telling him. The sentence hung between us like a test paper slid across a desk. I sat with it long enough to let the edges harden. Then I pushed my chair in an inch and set my hands flat on the table. Calm voice, even pace. I told her I'd come for a date with my wife, not a front row seat to her audition for someone else's attention. That got the first eye roll of the night meant for me, not him. She tilted toward the bar again, chasing the Miami thread like a lifeline. The guy kept his gaze on the liquor shelf, posture careful, shoulders squared to his drink as if neutrality could turn him invisible. I asked a direct question. Are you choosing this in front of me? That brought her eyes back, not wide. She said I was being dramatic, said grown-ups can talk to strangers at a bar without paperwork. I nodded once and said adults also keep promises they made at an altar, starting with respect. She laughed under her breath, that quiet, cutting sound that splits a moment into before and after. The server arrived with my dish and the roast she'd ordered. Her phone buzzed against the menu again. Quick glance, quick flip, screen face down like a secret sleeping under the tablecloth. I took a bite, finally tasting something. Lemon, butter, a heat that built slowly. I used that heat to steady myself. Then I asked another simple thing. Are you with me tonight or passing time until a better conversation opens up? She said she wanted an evening that wasn't heavy. Can you relax for once? The word relax had the same sharp edge it carried the first time. It sounded less like a suggestion and more like a verdict. I kept my cadence level. Relaxation happens when safety lives in the room. She called that manipulative, said I was policing her smile. The man cleared his throat and slid one stool down, an inch of distance that told me he had no stomach for a triangle. The bar returned its hum. Glasses clinked. Someone near the front door laughed too loudly at a joke that didn't deserve it. A song about highways and second chances threaded through the noise. I asked if there was someone else. The answer came with a shrug and a question of her own. Why did everything have to turn into an interrogation? I told her I had a right to understand what story I'd been cast in. Another shrug. Another sip. Another sideways glance that told me the conversation's gravity still lived 3 seats over, even with the guy trying to fade. She pivoted to offense. Said work had drained her all week. Said she needed lightness. Said I bring spreadsheets into dinners and agendas into Saturday mornings. I reminded her that my schedules pay our mortgage and keep suppliers from calling at dawn. She waved it away and smiled at a memory she shared with herself. Then she reached for the bottle to pour the rest into her glass, leaving mine at a quarter. It fit the mood, and I let it stand. The bill arrived halfway through that second pour. I laid my card on the tray without asking, not as a gesture, just to anchor the moment to something final. She slid the leather binder back, asked the server to split it, eyes on me the whole time. That landed harder than I expected. In marriage, you come to know which acts carry messages. Splitting a check after 7 years rarely means thrift. It means calculation. It means a ledger open somewhere beyond the table. When the server left again, I tried one more door. I said I'm here, fully present, willing to talk like partners. Are you? She moved a lock of hair behind her ear with a practiced, slow motion and told me I needed to stop making everything about us. She wanted to feel like a person who could enter a room and own it without a supervisor shadowing her. The phrasing had the polish of a podcast. I pictured her favorite influencer, the one who sells journals and dresses every grievance in enlightenment. The script sounded borrowed, but her delivery was flawless. The guy finally paid and stood. He gave me a small nod, an apology built into the angle of his chin. Then he left through the side door, taking the easy exit I hadn't taken yet. My wife watched him go with that faraway smile people wear when a movie ends and they're not ready to turn the lights back on. When she looked back, she found me steady and quiet, hands folded, gaze clear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list grievances. I asked one last time, "What exactly do you want from me tonight?" She said she wanted me to stop acting like a prison guard. Then the sentence that would mark the evening returned in a different coat. Doors open if you don't like the vibe. The tray came back with 2 receipts. I signed mine. She waited for me to react to the split, to the line about the door, to the entire exercise. The silence from me gave her nothing to work with, so she filled it. She said she used to love how decisive I was with clients, how I could look at a wall and tell whether it carried weight. Now, she said, that decisiveness felt controlling. I told her leadership without respect becomes noise, and I refused to add to it. Walking out then would have been easy. I could feel the path under my feet, smooth and straight. Still, I stayed in the chair another few minutes on purpose. I wanted the night to reveal itself completely, without impulse, without the fog that follows sudden exits. I watched her posture, the way she reclaimed space at our table as if it belonged solely to her. I heard the way she pronounced single words like freedom and energy, letting each one ring like a bell. On the drive home, separate cars by then, I received a text before the first light turned green. "You made that weird." I answered with a single sentence. I asked for respect. 3 dots pulsed. Vanished. Returned. Then, "You overreact to everything." I waited at the next light without replying. 2 more messages arrived before I pulled into our driveway. "You embarrassed me." Then, "A normal husband would chill." I set the phone on the passenger seat and watched the screen go dark. Inside the house, she moved through rooms turning on lamps like staging for an open house. Music started in the kitchen, up-tempo, glossy. She poured herself a drink and set her phone on the counter with the screen bright. New messages sliding in from friends with profile pictures I recognized from her stories. She read, typed, smiled at something catty, then called out that I needed to loosen up, that couples who last give each other latitude. I told her latitude and disregard are not cousins. She rolled her eyes without turning. I stepped to the sink and filled a glass with water. The quiet between us had a different density than the one at the bar. At home, the silence held history. Vacations, holidays, painted walls and rooms we chose together. She tried another angle, asked whether I'd always been this sensitive or if the business stress had turned me brittle. That one found a soft place and pressed. I breathed once, deep enough to feel ribs lift, and answered with care. I said names for feelings don't equal weakness. They indicate boundaries. Later in the bedroom, she scrolled through comments while changing into a silk set she reserves for nights when she wants to feel desired in photographs, not necessarily in arms. I asked if we were going to speak honestly or stage a piece for Instagram. She laughed, slid under the blanket, and said tomorrow would feel lighter if I chose to stop overanalyzing. Then she turned her back and reached for her phone again. The pressure had done its work. Accusations, minimizations, a chorus from her friends looping through the speaker I couldn't see. Instead of pushing back, I marked what I'd learned. The bar showed me her performance. The house showed me its endorsement. My questions didn't change her posture. They only revealed it. I set my alarm for an early site meeting, placed the phone face down, and lay staring at the ceiling fan. The blades cut the air in even strokes. Each turn felt like a metronome ticking toward a choice I had already made in principle, even if my feet had not carried it out yet. Tomorrow would ask for action. Tonight completed the record. I woke before the alarm, the way you do on the morning a job starts. Gray light pressed through the blinds, and the fan traced its circles above the bed. She slept on her side facing the window, screen glow still faint on the nightstand from whatever thread she'd scrolled until her eyes shut. I lay there for one measured minute and pictured a floor plan, walls, load paths, exits. Every house gives you one line that makes the rest clear. Last night had given me mine. I swung my feet to the floor and stood without ceremony. The closet held everything I needed within 2 arms' reach. Work jeans, boots, a week's worth of shirts rolled tight, the navy duffel I keep for side overnights. I filled it in a rhythm I know from 100 punchless sprints. Socks, belt, 2 flannels. Dop kit already stocked. File folder with my passport and original documents from the safe box on the shelf. Drawer by the bed for the ring. I set it inside its felt case, closed the lid, and placed it in the folder with the other valuables. This wasn't an argument leaving claw marks. This was a man stepping through an open door after the owner of the house told him she preferred the draft. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee silently and opened my laptop. 10 minutes to revoke authorized cards. Another 5 to redirect deposits into the account I'd kept for contingencies. Autopays remained for shared utilities, so the lights would stay on until paperwork caught up. Streaming passwords changed with a few keystrokes. No message following to explain why. My truck's title lives in my name only, so nothing to do there. Insurance app, beneficiary update, emergency contact moved to my brother. Simple levers pulled with steady hands. I booked the cabin 30 miles west, same one I'd used once when a client's pipe burst at midnight and I refused to drive home exhausted. 2 nights to clear my head and map the week. After that, a short-term rental until longer plans landed. Application already half complete from a month back, when something in me had started cataloging exits the way a carpenter counts fasteners without thinking. Back upstairs, she stirred and asked what time I needed to be on site. I said early and kept packing. She offered a lazy, good luck, the kind tossed into a room by someone already elsewhere. I zipped the duffel, lifted it once to feel the weight, and set it by the door. Wallet, keys, phone, folder. List complete. On my nightstand, I left the house key on a plain white index card. Nothing written. The empty space said everything that needed saying while refusing to add fuel. I walked the rooms one last time the way I walk a project before turning it over to a client. Appliances off, windows latched, back door locked, counters bare. The life we'd staged here looked as intact as any listing photo. Only the absence traveled with me. Out in the driveway, the morning air had the clean bite that comes after mountain rain. I loaded the duffel, slid the folder under the seat, and sat a moment with both hands on the wheel. The urge to explain tried one more time to form a sentence. I let it pass. The clearest boundary I could draw required silence. The phone began its work before I reached the first intersection. A text. So we're still on edge? Another followed. I meant fun, not drama. I watched the screen light up, then dim, then light again with fresh attempts at minimizing. Calls triggered the buzz that rattles the console lid. I let each one roll to voicemail without listening. The road climbed, twisted through fir and birch, then opened into the long view you get when the ridge line steps back. The city looked small from there, a toy set scattered along the river. I breathed in that distance like medicine. At the cabin, I checked in, dropped the duffel on the chair, and opened the windows to let the cool run through. The quiet felt earned. I placed my tools, laptop, charger, notebook, on the table and drew a rough plan for the next 72 hours. Day 1. Stabilize finances, secure a place to land, hire counsel. Day 2. Move essentials from the house, schedule a storage unit, inventory major items with photos and serial numbers. Day 3. Speak with HR about benefits, adjust withholding, and brief my foreman on the coming weeks so jobs never feel the tremor. I made 2 calls I trusted. First to my brother. I told him I'd be off the grid for a few days and that I might list him as primary contact for anyone trying to route messages through family. He said he had me, asked if I needed a pickup or company. I told him the drive and the quiet were the company I required. Second call to a lawyer recommended by a client who'd gone through a graceful exit last year. Reception picked up on the second ring and set a consultation for Monday at 9. Straightforward tone, no curiosity, exactly the energy I was after. By noon, I had a signed lease on a furnished studio above a bike shop 2 neighborhoods over from our house. Month to month, sunlight across the floor in the listing photos, clean lines, easy access to my job sites. I transferred the deposit and first month through the portal and set a move-in for Sunday morning. The landlord replied with a key code and a welcome message that fit on one line. Her text shifted in the afternoon. We need to talk. Then, are you actually leaving or playing a game? When silence met those, the messages tried humor. When humor failed, blame arrived in short bursts. I kept my phone on the table face down while I measured cabinet lengths for a kitchen design due Tuesday. Work orders don't care about personal storms. That's one blessing of trades. A board still wants ripping at an exact width. A miter still demands its angle. As daylight stretched across the floor, I drove back into town for a storage unit. The manager handed me a contract and a code, then slid a lock across the counter. I took the 12 by 10 near the front and labeled it with tape and a black marker. One trip to the house gave me the essentials I refused to replace. The leather tool roll my grandfather stitched, the framed photo of my parents on the day they opened their bakery, the oak box with letters from years that actually built us. She watched me carry the boxes without asking questions. Her mouth had the shape of words she chose not to say. I matched her restraint, loaded the truck, and left with the same unbroken calm I'd brought in. Back at the cabin, I laid the tool roll on the table like a compass, tucked the photo into the top drawer, and slid the oak box under the bed. I showered, stood barefoot on hand-rubbed pine, and felt a steadiness I recognized from the best job sites, the ones where a plan comes together clean. That evening, I set the phone to Do Not Disturb and placed it inside the kitchen drawer. A single lamp kept the room warm. I ate a simple meal, wrote 3 lines in the notebook to anchor the day, and read until the pages stopped moving. When I finally lay back, sleep came without any bargains. No mental courtroom. Just the quiet a man earns when his actions align with his standards. Morning would bring signatures, boxes, keys, and a new address. She would tell her version to whoever would listen. Friends would pick sides based on appetite for gossip. My response would remain the same it had been since the sentence at that bar. Walk through the open door and don't look back. The life I build next will carry my name on every beam. Silence can feel like absence from the outside. On the inside, it feels like a room framed square, plumb, and true. She must have thought I'd be circling back within days, tail between my legs, asking if we could talk things out. That's how these standoffs usually went in her mind. Me retreating just far enough to make her uncomfortable, then coming back to smooth over the mess she'd made. Except this time, there was nothing to return to. By the end of the week, the house felt different. Not just quiet, empty. My things were in order, but hers weren't where she left them. I'd boxed up what she'd left scattered, shipped a few essentials to her sister's place, and stored the rest in the garage. I left her a short email. Your belongings are safe. Arrange a time to collect the rest. The first reply came the same day. Short, clipped. We need to talk. I didn't answer. 2 days later. Why are you acting like this? You're being immature. Still nothing. Then came a call, straight to voicemail. Another, and another. By the 4th missed call, she left a message that didn't sound like anger anymore. It sounded like someone realizing the game wasn't going the way they'd planned. Friends started reaching out. Her friends. At first, it was the usual polite probing. Hey, Is everything okay between you two? But after I kept my answers minimal, the tone shifted. One even admitted she'd been told I overreacted and stormed out without explaining anything. I told her calmly, if she's sharing her side, she can share the whole side. I walked out because she told me the door was open, so I used it. The line landed harder than I expected. There was silence on the other end, then a quiet, huh, that's not how she told it. It spread from there. Whatever story she'd crafted started losing traction. A couple of mutual acquaintances unfollowed her online. A friend of hers, someone I never thought would defend me, sent a message saying she didn't like how it looked. It wasn't my doing. People simply connected the dots. Her mother called me. That was the real sign of the shift. Polite, almost warm, she said she wished things could be worked out, but understood why I might feel pushed away. That conversation told me everything. If her own family wasn't rallying behind her without question, they'd seen the cracks too. Meanwhile, she kept trying new tactics. First came the guilt. Long texts about throwing away years and breaking our vows over one comment. Then the nostalgia, photos from old trips, messages like, remember when we used to, as if reminding me of the good years would erase what she'd done in the bad ones. When those fell flat, the tone hardened again. She claimed I was proving her point that I couldn't handle her independence. That one almost made me laugh. Independence doesn't require disrespect. She just hadn't expected to be held accountable for it. The moment I knew she was unraveling was when a mutual friend mentioned she'd been showing up at group events alone, brushing off questions with vague lines about needing space, while scanning the room, probably hoping I'd walk in. I never did. I wasn't avoiding her out of spite. I was living differently now. My evenings weren't tense minefields of passive remarks and forced civility. They were calm, productive, quiet in a good way. I'd picked up hobbies I'd been putting off. My sleep improved. I noticed the difference in my own posture, shoulders looser, jaw unclenched. Her last attempt came 3 weeks later. A message saying she finally understood what I'd been upset about, paired with a promise to do better. There was no apology, just the implication that her understanding was the gift. I read it once, set the phone down, and went back to what I was doing. Whatever she was expecting, a fight, a negotiation, some dramatic reconciliation, it wasn't this. And that was the real consequence. I wasn't punishing her. I'd just stopped participating in the cycle where her actions came without cost. She had wanted me to see what life without her attention looked like. Instead, she got to see what life without my presence felt like. And from everything I'd heard, she didn't like it nearly as much as she'd imagined. The shift came quietly, not in one dramatic moment, but in a series of smaller ones that stacked up until there was nothing left between us worth salvaging. By the time her last message landed, a half-hearted blend of understanding and veiled self-praise, I had already finished packing her out of my mind. When I returned to the house a month after leaving, it was strictly for the final sweep. My keys still fit, though they felt foreign in my hand. The place smelled faintly of the candles she always kept burning, but the scent didn't pull me toward anything familiar. Instead, it reminded me of how often those flames had flickered over evenings filled with tension. She was waiting, clearly rehearsed. Her voice lacked the bite it had in those first weeks. I see now why you reacted the way you did, she said, as if announcing a revelation would be enough to reset the board. She lingered in the doorway of the kitchen, watching for a signal that I was still in this conversation. I zipped the last duffel and met her gaze evenly. If you truly saw it, you'd understand why I'm leaving it there. I didn't fill the silence with qualifiers or explanations. The truth didn't need decoration. She tried again, softer this time, mentioning shared history, old vacations, moments that had once meant something. Her words were careful, almost delicate, but they slid off like water on glass. I'd already understood something she hadn't. Memory is not a reason to return to a place where you've been diminished. The final boxes went into the truck in 2 trips. She hovered on the porch, arms crossed, still looking like she was expecting the moment to pivot in her favor. It didn't. I gave her a short nod, closed the tailgate, and stepped into the driver's seat. Her figure blurred in the side mirror as I pulled away. The drive back to my apartment was calm in a way that felt earned. I wasn't thinking about what she might be telling people or whether her circle still believed her version. That story had already begun to collapse under its own weight weeks ago. Mutual friends who once avoided choosing sides had stopped mentioning her at all. A few had reached out privately, their tone cautious but clear. I think I understand now. I rebuilt without ceremony. Mornings started earlier, not out of necessity, but because I wanted them. My workspace became something I actually liked walking into. The small details of living alone. Choosing where the coffee mugs went, rearranging furniture on a whim, felt more valuable than they should have. They were signs of a life that belonged entirely to me again. Her name still appeared on my phone from time to time, though less with each passing week. At first, the messages pretended at casual updates. Then they shifted to small observations only I would get, as if private jokes could bridge the gap. Eventually, the tone turned reflective, almost regretful, but still missing the one thing that might have mattered: accountability. I let them pass without reply. It wasn't about punishment. It was about ending the pattern where every slight could be brushed away if she decided the timing was right. By keeping that line silent, I kept the boundary in place. Word filtered back through friends that she'd been showing up at gatherings looking distracted, scanning for familiar faces, rarely staying long. She was learning, perhaps for the first time, that walking away doesn't always mean someone is chasing you. Sometimes it means they've found a better direction. The house we'd shared was just another address to me now. The routines we'd built had been replaced by ones that suited me better. My days were quieter, but not empty. The absence of conflict made space for things I'd been neglecting. I realized I'd stopped checking the clock in the evenings, stopped bracing for the next careless remark. Leaving when she told me the door was open had been the cleanest decision I'd ever made. Standing by that choice, through her attempts at guilt, nostalgia, and justification, proved something more important. Respect is not something you negotiate down to fit someone else's comfort. She wanted me to see what life without her attention felt like. I let her see what life without my presence looked like. The contrast spoke louder than any argument ever could. When the last of her messages stopped coming, I didn't mark the date. By then, the door in my mind had been shut for so long that even the memory of it felt like another life. And in a way, it was.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.